WordPress grids, or loops, are an integral part of a typical site, as are filters, searches, and sorting tools. In this sponsored video for GridBuilderWP, I'm going to show you how you can get started with this powerful WordPress plugin and how you can easily integrate it into the popular Elementor page builder. Now, this video is the first in a 3-part sponsored series on getting started with GridBuilderWP. In future videos, I'll be showing you how you can easily add grids to your Oxygen-based websites, as well as taking a closer look at how to start building your own custom card designs for your websites. Now, if you're ready, let's just jump into WordPress and take a look at getting started with GridBuilderWP. So this is GridBuilderWP. It does a couple of things that are really useful, especially if you're creating something just a little bit more customized. We can create both filters, facets, and searches. And we can also create custom grid layouts. So if you want to work with things like advanced custom fields, WooCommerce, or just the basic built-in WordPress features, you can do it all with GridBuilderWP. And in this first video, I'm going to show you how we can start building some of the basics alongside using Elementor. Now, once you've gone ahead and installed GridBuilderWP into your WordPress website, you're going to have a new entry down the left-hand side. And inside there, we've got a range of different options and settings. The 3 key things that we're going to take a look at today are grids, cards, and facets. Now, we're only going to touch upon cards in this example because we're going to be using primarily Elementor to work with things today, but I will give you a very brief overview of how cards work, and I will be covering this in its own dedicated tutorial a little later on. So if you want to check that out, you can do. If you want to skip past this timestamp's in the description below. So let's open up the All Cards option. And then we have a range of pre-built cards we can use to either use them exactly as they are, or we can use them as a starting point to customize, or we can ignore these completely and create a card from scratch. However, let's take a look at how we can import one of these and we can see what makes up a card. So let's just say, for example, I like the look of this amber one. We can select that and we can just say import the data. Now, you can import multiple different designs at this point if you want to, or import all of them so you've got a lot to choose from. We'll click import data and that will import things into the editor and viewer area. Now, this is what you're going to see as the basic layout for your card. Now, this is something that you need to just kind of get your head on what a card is. It's basically a loop item inside WordPress. Now, this could be a post, it could be a product in WooCommerce, it could be a range of different things, including custom fields and things like that. So this is the template we're going to use. And as you can see, when we mouse over it, we can kind of interact with it and see how all the different elements work. And we can use this exactly as it is, or we could edit it if we wanted to. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but let's just say we wanted to edit this. We can simply come up, click on edit, and that will open up the editor where we can edit the card. So we've got all these different areas, different items inside there that make up a card, and we can select any of these and we could then go ahead and style them, delete them, set actions up on them, loads and loads of different options. And I mean, there are lots of different options. So you should be able to fine tune and get exactly what you want from your design just by using these templates as a starting point. Okay, so that's really is just the basics of how cards work. What we're more interested in though are the facets, which allow us to search and filter, and the grids, which allow us to actually lay things out and control exactly how things are going to look. So let's just jump over to the grids now. We've actually created or set up or imported our basic card design. We'll go to all grids and we're going to create a new grid inside here. So we're going to add a new grid. I'm going to give this a name and we're just going to call this sample grid tutorial. We can enter a class name if you want to target this with CSS, and there's a lot of options inside here. But what we're going to do is we're going to work through most of these options on the left-hand side. If you kind of use this as a sort of wizard, it's going to give you all the different things that you need to set things up, ready to start working. Now, this is the first part of working with grids, and we're going to be using the built-in grid that comes as part of WP Grid Builder. However, you can, like I say, still use Elementor if you want to, and I'll show you that as well. So the next thing we're going to do is the content query. And this allows us to do a few different things. We can set up what content type we want to use, whether it's a post type, terms, or users. And then you've got a range of different options for how you want to deal with that. So we can say we can set how many items per page. So let's just set this to 12. You could offset if you want to inside here as well. So you may want to have a focal point on the first item inside your grid and you want to design that slightly differently. You can set an offset value of 1, and then the first post in any of your grids won't be shown up. Quite useful. You can also set things up like the basic ordering, the post types, and so on. So what we're going to do is the post type, we're going to leave set to posts, but you can expand this and you'll see anything you've got installed, including custom post types, WooCommerce, those kinds of things, will be listed inside here, and this is where you can set up what the content of your grid is going to be for. We'll leave that set to posts. We'll leave the post status to publish because generally on a site you don't really want to have any posts being displayed that are not published. And if you want to filter things by authors and exclude posts and so on, you can do. And the same goes for things like taxonomies. You can set up and configure taxonomies. You can set up how it's going to be dealt with, whether it's include or exclude, the or and terms relation. Lots of useful things. And if you want to work with custom fields, you can also set things up inside there. Now, I don't have custom fields to worry about in this example, so we'll ignore that. So we're happy with everything set up there. Hop over to the media formats, and this is where you can control different media formats that might make a part of your grid. So things like gallery, audio, video, and then you can deal with how they're going to be displayed. So you might want your videos to open up in a lightbox, for example, as opposed to clicking and going through to somewhere else. Well, you can configure that inside here as well. Your default thumbnail, if you want to have a fallback value, you can drop that inside there. And you can also set up an override aspect ratio if you know you want to work with, for example, a square, which you can set to 1:1 or 16:9 if you're working with like YouTube videos, or leave it to the default 4:3. Entirely up to you. We're going to leave that set to the default. You can then control what thumbnails are going to be used to create the actual thumbnail inside your grid. Now, when you install WordPress and different themes, you'll have a range of different resized images for every file that you upload into your media library. As you can see, we've got a range inside here. We're going to leave this to medium large because we're going to have quite a large display, but you can change any value you want, including desktop and mobile. So you can set that up to make sure you optimize your grid for whatever device is being consumed on. Your grid layout. You can see we can choose between masonry, metro, and justified. Now, depending upon the type of card you've chosen will often dictate the type of layout that you can use. So masonry and metro and so on. And you may receive an error message if you try to use a card that doesn't fit into the layout type. Don't worry though, it's easy to change. You can set things up inside here and style everything, so full width, your card positions and so on. So you can see you can do things like equal height, you can fit them into rows, and everything pretty much has a little help icon by the side of it if you're unsure what any of these values are actually for. So I'm going to leave you to kind of play about with those, and you can sort of get a feel for how they all work. What we're interested in is the grid responsive side of things. And what you can do inside here is you can set up for various different types of devices, the pixel resolution that can be displayed upon, and then control the number of columns that are being used. This is limited to only working with the grid that's set up as part of GridBuilderWP. It won't work if you set things up through Elementor itself. So just bear that in mind. These settings are going to be ignored if you're not using the internal grids. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to be something like, we'll have 2 columns on a larger browser, 2 columns on a smaller. On a tablet that's set to landscape, we'll set that to be 2 columns. On portrait 1, and we'll set the values as we want. Now, these spacing items are the space between each of the individual cards. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to a value of 20 pixels, for example, and we'll take a look at how that looks once everything is finished. Grid carousel. Now, this just allows you to basically say whether you want to have a standard grid, which goes across in rows and columns, or if you want to substitute it for a carousel. So you may want to have something like a nice section at the top of your grid, which has a carousel, maybe showing half a dozen different items, and then a normal grid underneath. Well, you could combine 2 different grids into your layout, and then you could have a carousel in the first one and set an offset like I mentioned earlier, and then you could also then have standard for the alternative listings below. Lots of options there for us. We're going to leave it set to standard in this example. Now, the grid builder section is basically going to be completely ignored, and we're not even going to touch it. This is something that's kind of more deprecated, so it would be good to see this kind of taken out if it's not needed in the future. Card styles. Now, this is where we can choose the different card styles for different types of post formats. So, for example, your default is kind of going to be your fallback for any kind of default content. So what we'll do is we can go into there and we can start typing and this will search, or we can use the browse and that'll go through and browse for anything we have listed and downloaded, installed, set up, those kinds of things with regards to cards. So we'll set that to amber, and then you can see we've got posts, and we'll do the same thing on this. We'll set that to amber. And then if you've got any other ones, you can set the default cards inside there. And if you've got custom post types and you've got WooCommerce, for example, you can set up different cards for each of those different kinds of posts. So it's cool to see you can have those options inside there. And also things like the post format cards, you can see we can set and configure things inside there, including things like your card colors and so on. But we're going to leave those as they are. Again, this is the kind of thing you could experiment with if you wanted to. Jumping into animations, And this is where we can animate how each of the cards is actually displayed. Now, personally for me, I would prefer to have no animation because Google is kind of rating this as an important factor now where you have shift in designs. This is something that it'll rate your site on. So you need to be careful with animations, but you have those there if you want to. And you can see we can have fade in and it'll show us exactly how these work. Give us a representation. We can change the animation easing if we want to. We can change the duration, the delay, and all those kinds of things. For this example though, I'm going to leave that disabled so we just have a static layout. Then we have the loading option. So you can do things like lazy load your images, which is quite useful, especially if you have a larger grid that you're working with. That way you don't have to make the user wait for all the images to download. As the page loads, you can just have it as they enter the viewport of the browser. Your loading spinner, which is basically your content loader kind of thing like this. And you can set these values up, the colors and everything. If you want to have a content loading animation, you can do that inside here and choose whichever option you prefer. And you can see there's quite a few available. So I'm going to select this option and change the color on there, and we'll change that to orange, for example. And you can see that shows us in real time how it's going to work. The final option we have is customization. So if you want to add in custom CSS or custom JavaScript, you can do that directly inside here and customize things even further if you're comfortable doing that kind of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit save changes on there, and then we can preview this to see what it'll look like. And you can see that's going to show us a preview of it. Now it looks a little bit weird at the moment because this is showing a very large display. So this isn't exactly what it's going to look like on our device, but we can now jump through and make sure everything looks and scales the way that we're happy with it on the various different layouts that we've set up for all the different kinds of devices that are supported inside GridBuilderWP. Okay, so that's that side of things done. Now they've gone ahead and created our first grid. We need to make sure that we can set this up and work inside Elementor. So all you need to do is grab yourself the free Elementor add-on from WPGridBuilder.com. Simply install that, and then we can head back over into our dashboard of WordPress. And from here, we're going to create a new page, and we're just going to call this sample grid. We'll just publish this. Once that's done, we're going to edit this now with Elementor. Now what we can do is simply insert our new grid. So let's create a section, and inside here we're going to set this up with 2 columns, add a little bit of space around it just to make it have a little bit of breathing space, and there we go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drop in the grid inside this right hand section. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're going to do a search inside here for our grid option. We'll drag and drop that into our design. All we need to do now is choose select a grid, and you can see there's our sample grid tutorial. There's our grid inserted directly into our design using all the setup we've got created inside GridBuilderWP. Really easy to do. So now we've got a grid inside there. We can resize this a little bit. And the next thing we want to take a look at is dealing with those facets. So let's just update this page. And once we've updated it, we're going to hop back out of here and we're going to take a look at how we can set up our first set of facets. Now, what exactly is a facet when it comes to GridBuilderWP? Well, it's a filter, it's a search, it's a sort, it's a lot of different things. And this is the beauty of working with GridBuilderWP, is that we have all these at our disposal. As you can see, when we come into the All Facets option, we've got a range of different kinds of facets, selections, search, sort, and so on, like I said. So what we can do is we can select all of these if we want to, we can import the data, or we can just create a brand new facet. And that's what we're going to do. I want to show you exactly how you can work with this for yourself. Now inside the facets, there are 2 separate sections. There's the naming and there's the behavior. So first of all, let's just create this, and we're going to call this sort order. We can title this as well, and we're just going to give it the same name as well. So we'll just put that inside there for the title. And this is what you'll see on the front end of the site if you enable this option. Once we've done that, we're going to jump over to the behavior. Now this might look a little daunting to start off with, but in all honesty, it is fairly straightforward. You can choose, first of all, the facet type. Is it a filter? Is it a load? Is it sort, apply, so on? Well, this example, we want a sort. So we'll select sort, and you can see that now changes and shows us the options we have for sorting. So the first thing we can do is enter a label. So we're just going to say sort posts, and we'll put brackets A to Z. Close that down. We'll copy that from there, just so I've got a duplicate. Order by, we're just going to say post title, and we're going to choose ascending. We're not going to worry about a field, custom field. We're not using custom fields in this example. We'll add a second option, and we'll just paste in, and we're going to change this now from Z to A. Post title again, the second time, and descending is perfectly fine. Do we want to worry about a combo box or anything like that? Nope, we're going to leave that as it is. So we've created our first facet. So let's just save the changes on there, and that's our facet. We can re-index this if we want to, and that will just go through if new content's been added and make sure that everything is included inside our facet when it comes to searching, sorting, and those kinds of things. So that's our first facet created. Let's come back to all facets again. Let's create a new one. Going to create a new facet, and this time we're going to give this a different name. For this example, we're just going to call this search. And again, the same thing for the facet title. We're just going to give that the same name. So we're going to call that search as well. And again, we're going to come into the behavior. We're going to choose this option to be filter, and we're going to choose the filter type to be set to search field. We'll select that option, and you can see now that gives us different options. So the search placeholder, we're going to just drop in the same term, a couple of dots after it so people know exactly what to do. Then you've got your search engine. Now, we've only got WordPress. We have nothing else installed in here. But if you had Search WP or Relevancy, you could use those to integrate directly into GridBuilderWP. We're going to just choose WordPress in this example. And then you can see we can set the search number, and we can also search relevancy. Now, if you wonder what the search relevancy is, keep search order relevance. It can be useful when using a plugin like Search WP and weighing attributes. So we're not going to worry too much about that. Instant search. This is basically, if you enable this, as you start typing, you'll see that your data will automatically start to be searched against. For this example, we're going to leave the instant search disabled, and we're going to do the same again. We're going to hit Save Changes, and that's our second one done. Let's add one more in just so I can show you how it all works for a different type. So again, back to all facets. I'm going to create a new facet, give this a name. We'll call this one category, and you're going to use this now to filter our post category. Jump into behavior. Filter is perfectly fine. We're going to leave checkboxes for this example, and you can see this gives us a different range of options. So our data source, in other words, what do we want to filter against? Now, when it comes to WordPress, we know that anything to do with your posts and your categories is basically just a taxonomy. So we'll leave taxonomy set inside there, but you could, if you wanted to, filter based upon WordPress fields or custom fields if you're using ACF, anything like that. So taxonomy, we can just use categories in this example, and any kind of taxonomies you have as part of WordPress and anything else you may have set up and configured, custom post types, those kinds of things will all be listed inside here. We're going to choose categories, and we're going to leave everything else as it is, but if you wanted to include or exclude terms, you could do that inside here as well. You can then use your filter logic. Do you want this to be and or filter, which could be very, very useful? And is the data going to be hierarchical? And if so, do you want to show the children, empty choices, those kinds of things? Again, if you're unsure about any of these, you can test them out, try them out, use the little help icon by the side. You'll get your sort of head around how this all works. And I don't want to make this tutorial too long trying to explain every single option we have. Okay, choice numbers, we can leave everything as it is on there. And you want to set your ordering, whether it's descending or ascending, up to you how you want to deal with that. We're going to leave it all the default values inside there and hit Save Changes. We've now created 3 different facets inside GridBuilderWP. Our search, our sort, and a category filter. So now we need to put those into the page we've designed. So let's just hop over to our pages and let's open up the page we're going to work with, which is our sample grid. We'll edit that with Elementor. Once that's opened up, we can now start dropping in the different facets. So we come over and do a search for facet. We're going to grab this icon, drop that inside there. And the first thing you want to do is choose what facet do you want to use. So for this example, we're going to use the search first of all. And we're going to say, what do we want this to actually work with? In other words, how are we going to output the search results? We're going to use our sample grid tutorial grid, which is what we have on screen on the right-hand side. So there's our search. That's the first one done. We're going to repeat this process a second time. So we're going to do a search for facet again. And we're going to grab that facet icon, drop that underneath our search this time. Do the same. We're going to do this one this time though for category. And we're going to set this up to be sample grid tutorial again. And you can see there's our categories, news and features. And our third and final option, which again, we're going to search for that facet. And we're going to drag that this time above our actual grid itself, because we're going to use this for our sort. So what we're going to do is sort order, sample grid tutorial, and we're going to hit update on there. So now what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to use any of these in isolation, or we can use them in combination. So we can search and we can filter based upon the category, and then we can sort them in an order if we want to. So let's take a look at that in action. Let's start off by taking a look at sorting. So let's just say we want to sort these from Z to A, and you can see, there we go. We've got everything is now sorted the way we'd expect. We can flip that around the other way if we want to and say we want to do it from A to Z, and you can see there's our things all set up. With that in place, we can also now say we want to look at news items. And you can see these are still in alphabetical order. And if we wanted to search on something, we could search on that as well. So let's just add a simple search term inside there and we'll enter that. And as you can see, that now filters things down even more so. We can easily uncheck this, go for feature this time, and you can see we get different results again. So all of these are now working in combination with each other. And that's using both the facets and the grid. But what if we don't want to use the grid side of things? We still want to have control of styling and dealing with everything inside the Elementor editor. We can do that too. What we need to do, we're going to jump back over inside here and we're just going to simply delete this grid. So we'll delete that from there. So we're going to leave all the filters and everything in place. And we're going to just use the ordinary post widget inside Elementor and we'll drop that in its place. So we'll just quickly change this over so you can see exactly how this all works. So you can see I'm doing nothing other than a normal layout. But obviously we've chosen to use the filter, the searches and so on with the grid that's part of GridBuilderWP. However, we can change that really easily. Let's select our search, for example, and you can see sample grid tutorial is all still in there. Let's just delete that. You'll see now, because we've dropped in a grid, we've got this Elementor grid and a post ID, a unique number for that specific grid. We'll select that, and you see that now updates it. We can do exactly the same for our filter, so we'll just delete that from there, choose the grid, and the third and final option is going to be our ordering option at the top. Select that from there and choose the grid. Update that. We're going to hop back over onto our test page and refresh. And you can see, let's just get rid of anything that's at the top here, previews and all that kind of search information. Just we're starting clean and fresh. So now we're using the built-in feature, the posts feature that's part of Elementor. So let's just take a look. If we choose Z to A, you can see that updates and now shows it in alphabetical order. If we come in and choose features, you can see that filters things down. And again, if we come in and just do a search inside here for something like this, for example, you can see now we filter down even further. So you can use the grid that's part of Elementor. You can use the grid that's part of GridBuilderWP. It's entirely up to you which way you want to go. But whichever method you use, you have a huge amount of control now over filtering, searching, sorting, and so much more. Now, all of the applicable links are in the description below, and if you found the video useful, well, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me out. If you didn't get value from the video though, well, feel free to hit the thumbs down button twice, as that works pretty well too. My name is Paul C, this is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.